What a way once again to invite you to our podcast for today, Saturday. It's a beautiful weekend, and our country or homeland, Liberia, is celebrating 200 years of existence from 1982. From 1822 to 2022. What a milestone. And there's a whole lot of history we can unpack in our memories and in our history books. And we are so glad you are here. And today's podcast is going to be looking at truth Liberians don't see. Now, you may ask the question, but what is the truth are we talking about here? You know, truth as a whole is a reality of uh, looking at a standard that is subscribed to everybody. That is, we all want justice, we want fairness, and we all can derive truth from those things that affect our life. We want justice, we want peace, we want liberty, freedom. But if truth is missing, then there's a problem. So then, this live podcast discussion is not primarily about defining a political leadership or the characteristics of leadership, because we have seen from time to time leaders come and go. Still, the nation remains unsettled in its unwholesome identity and character. In other words, we tend to remain the same. The progress is stagnant. So, truth Liberians do not see is about what truthfully is missing in our quest for leadership, reconciliation, and peace, as well as stability. So then, what truths might serve as guiding light and roadmap to bring the nation of Liberia to its rightful place in history? And that question is a question that we all can answer. And because we want to know what is the pervasive wedge of falsehood that tend to get us in a circle. We cannot get out of the circle with bloodletting and everything that is going wrong in our country. We want to see a positive answer or future. And therefore, today we will be looking at what are some of the ways and means which we can devise as a people to rise up from the doldrums of poverty, economic crisis, and every crisis you might count, including uh, what would I say? Including not just spiritual, physical, but economic crisis or emotional crisis. And that's what we'll be looking at today in order for us to progress as a country. So, our podcast live stream will provide some insights and perspective. And as you know, this podcast is all about looking at contemporary issues that affect the Christian faith of life. And today we have a special guest, and he is Mr. John Lord. John Lord lives in Washington, D.C. He is a proponent, a very strong voice in both locally in the community where he served as the national president or the president of the DC metro area. And he also carried on some other initiatives within his community as well as on a much level with Washington, D.C. city. That is a city where he engaged in a lot of other initiatives for the benefit of the people of color. He is also a proponent when it comes to bringing peace and stability and reconciliation in our country, Liberia. And he has written a lot of articles as well as spoken on many occasions regarding how our country can be peaceful and stable. And he understands the characteristics of leadership. So today, he is our special guest and he will be appearing. And just not to forget, just to note, he also served as the former vice president of the Association of Liberian Journalists in the Americas. Way back, he was one of the members who became very staunch in advocating the rights of journalists as well as advocating for the rights of ordinary Liberians. So he's our guest today, and he will be giving us some insights and perspective on how we can find a roadmap to peace and stability and reconciliation in our country. And as we celebrate 200 years of existence, yeah, where are areas in which we fall short, and where are areas in which we can look to see a positive light at the end of the tunnel. So he's our guest today, and as always, Our co-host Reverend Swadede is here, but he is going through some technical difficulties, so he will join us shortly as we continue the podcast. So, welcome once again. My name is Alexander Red, and this is the Gracious Hopes live broadcast on KMTV. KMTV, we are everywhere. If you put us to the test, we beat the rest. And of course, we are so glad that you're joining us. And don't feel and feel free or don't hesitate to make a comment or whatever that is on your mind. What can we do to make Liberia a better place or to make the country, that city or that country that is on that hill? How can we be a beacon of light? And how can we um, um, usher in our identity and understand our traditional practices of values and principles of our faith in Christ? And so I'm so glad that you're here today. And as we get on this podcast, we hope that you will join us and make your comments and opine about how you see our country, where we have come, and where we intend to go. We all want positive change. We all want our country to prosper in every way, but it takes the efforts for of each and every one of us. So, my our guest will be here to give us some light on how we Liberians should see ourselves in reference to our identity as a nation of people, putting aside our differences, our tribal affiliations, as well as what would I say, a group association or whatever links that we might have to prove our identity. And the fact is, we all want progress, but then how do we arrive at progress, tangible progress in our country? And so, without much ado, I will now bring on our special guest today, Mr. John Lloyd. I would like to say welcome, Mr. Lloyd. So glad to see you.
Glad to see you, Alex. It's a wonderful opportunity joining in company with you again, considering our history as friends.
Yes. And the primary reason why we invited you as guests on the program, we understand and we know that you have vast knowledge when it comes to leadership. You understand the characteristics of leadership, and you have seen our country from all of its worst and the good as well. And so it is important that we tap on your knowledge to look at or discuss this particular topic that we are discussing today on this podcast, which is the truth Liberians do not see. Now, that particular topic, it sounds like, well, what is he talking about? What is the truth? And how do we arrive at this truth? And what is the truth that we cannot see as Liberians? So from the get-go here, we are in 2022, and this is a bicentennial celebration of our country's existence. Let's start with the good things first. How do you see in a positive light a country or a nation of people known as Liberians and the country with its sovereign rights, Liberia?
Thank you very much, Alex, for inviting me to this show. And I must commend you for your tremendous initiative to launch such a very enlightening effort, an initiative, an ongoing initiative on your part, to use the skills and the talents and your education to contribute to your country in terms of enlightening our population about the burning issues of the day, uh, especially within a religious and a Christian format as you have created. Looking at the history of our country, Liberia, and you mentioned the good aspects of our nation because I think quite often we speak about what we are not and the failures that we have. We have to recognize, first of all, that Liberians are human as any other group of people, and the very influences that lead people to good or bad affects us equally as people. But if we look at the history of Liberia, there's a lot to be proud of. Starting with the fact that we are the first independent African nation. Of course, Ethiopia existed before us, but not as a republic. So, being the first African republic, many expect us to be much further than where we are over 170 years. But we have to understand that the reality of our history explains that we didn't come, we didn't start off with privileges. This nation was started off with people who had nothing, and on a continent where there were no other African nations to interact with, and with nothing, that our forefathers built this nation. There were social problems, intertribal conflicts, conflict between the settlers and the indigenous Liberians. We grew out of those circumstances to build a nation that participated in the formation of the United Nations, producing the first president of the UN General Assembly, being the deciding nation to create the state of Israel, siding with the United States in two world wars. We are the country that stood tall and took a leading role in creating what is now the African Union. We also had a leading role in creating ECOWAS, the Economic Community of West African States that came back to help to rescue us in a time of war. We have produced the first, in many instances, even the former president, Ellen Sirleaf, first female African president to be elected, and even the current president, if we leave politics aside, have contributed, to bringing us on the map as the first and African to win, great accolades in Europe and in football around the world. The fact that we have had democratic elections coming out of a bitter history and still managed to stand as a nation, regardless of all the turmoil, speaks strength on our part.
Yes.
So we have had our failures, no doubt, but there's potential for brighter days ahead.
Hmm. Yes, and I like that note that you ended.
Yeah,
There's potential for better
yeah,
days ahead because Liberians have the potential, we have the skills, gifts, and abilities to build our country to be not to the rest. And but we see over the years we have faltered. We went through civil war first from assassinations or coups and assassination, and then civil war um, that resulted into the deaths of many people, the death of many people, as well as damages or the destruction of properties. And also, we experienced the epidemic, Ebola, and now the COVID-19. We have been through a lot. And through all of the tough times, um, we see leadership, all political leadership changing and going and coming in. And there's a lot we can say looking at the resilience of the Liberian people. Now, after every 6 years, there's an election. We have new leaders, and we hear that motto is to build or make progress. And here we are, still struggling and wanting to move ahead as a country. Now, from your experience and being a proponent and being a strong voice when it comes to nationalism, when it comes to um, getting out the skills that others have or helping them to be someone more, would I say, productive in society with your
mhm.
experience on the local level, that is your immediate vicinity, and being a leader, and then on the national level. And now, where are we right now when it comes to our country? Why are we so divisive in our politics? Why are we so um, disunited when it comes to loving one another? Why so?
Well, the reason is simple. We are human. And in any human beings, we all have children. One can cultivate the best out of a person, and one can also cultivate the worst out of a person. So I wouldn't be too much on the Liberian people for their wrong, although we acknowledge it. We have a very soiled history, a history where we have done wrong to each other, not just since 1980, but long before 1980. We have done wrong. There have been inequities in our history, and even post 1980, we have seen the worst come out of Liberians, killing each other wantonly. The war cannot be over described when it comes to the heinous wrongs and evil that we did to each other. But these evil that have come out of Liberians was triggered by the leadership that brought out the worst out of us instead of the best out of us. If we can cultivate leadership, we can indeed move in a direction where a sleeping giant can be awakened within the populace
Mhm.
of the Liberian people. I describe the Liberian people as a sleeping giant because I recognize the resilience despite all the crises that we have endured. And I know that if if the best is tapped within the human values of Liberians, we can turn to another direction that will be very positive. You see, there are many who sit in jail who could be better people if they were influenced by better environment. And those of you who are familiar with the word can relate to that particular fact. Liberians are no worse, uh, than their fellow Africans that are doing better, or people in Europe or elsewhere around the world. But what we need is direction and inspiration from the proper source. And there can be no greater source than leadership. Uh, uh, I'm not trying to beat on our recent leaders or say that they haven't done what they could, but I think they could have done better. And the reason why they haven't done better because leadership should be ushered with a vision, and that vision can be transformed into a mission if there is a plan. There are many who aspire for leadership with the purpose of acquiring power, and there's a difference between power and position.
Hmm.
Those who aspire for position aspire to make a difference, using that position as an opportunity, to usher change. But those who aspire for power seek an opportunity to use their position for personal gain and aggrandizement. And we see that right now in even the political environment in our country, where we observe, in recent days, the opposition fighting each other unnecessarily, although they claim that they want to unseat the incumbent. Uh, and you would think that if they were serious about what they say they want to do, they would take a different turn. But they appear to be walking in a fatalistic political path instead of, it makes one to wonder whether they really want what they say they want, because the position is all or nothing. Uh, that is the quest for power instead of position, because you see, the desire for position would put the cause and the goals first, instead instead of the greed for an office or an opportunity to rule. Now, going back to the issue of our people and leadership, I believe that if Liberia acquires or is blessed to receive or attain a leader with a vision that can inspire the best of our people will do better. Our people need to understand that they have values and they have a potential to move in the right direction. A direction must be given to them to lift them up out of, as a state of adolescence. You go to Liberia, you see people doing nothing. But with inspiration, these people can be put to work. They can feel proud to be Liberians, and they can see a purpose for which they should unite. But if we preach to them every day why they should be, the reason why they should be divided, and remind them every day that they are different from one another. If we preach politics of tribalism, Congo versus country, remind them each and every day that they are different from each other. That one group is to be blamed for the historical problems. It may be the Crown or the Liberians or the Mandingos or the so-called Congo people that are responsible for our problems. Then each and every day we're teaching our population to hate each other. The each and every one of these ethnic groups are Liberians just like us. So the potential for wrong, if it exists in one, exists in all. But we can come together through inspiration from the top, and we will be surprised at the dividends that we will receive in terms of our leadership. But first, it starts with a plan and a vision for change.
Wow, a plan and a vision for a change. And
Yeah,
Mr. Lloyd,
yeah,
Reverend Daddy, just reminds me about what James chapter 4 said. The Apostle James said, why do you quarrel or war among yourselves? You want it, you want something, you don't ask the right way, but you murder, you kill, you do a lot of other stuff to get what you want. And the same mouth still said you love God. And so what Mr. Lord is saying here is that there are a lot of Liberians who have potential, and he mentioned the word giant. there are many awakening giants, or giants need to be awakening in the people. In other words, people need to be motivated, they need to be inspired to look toward a goal. And that inspiration should come through politics of unity. And from what I'm hearing so far, there's such a division regarding the wranglings within the various offices of the political arena due to their own infighting or due to whatever that is going on. So it sends a signal to the entire Liberia populace that there is a division and there is something that is amiss. But now we want to correct these things. And it is hard for the ordinary Liberian to actually um, be aware in a sense where that, well, they quarrel and they want to be leaders, and they are sometimes left with no alternative but to maybe select or elect the same people. However, looking at the country's health right now, both not just the political arena, but the church as a whole, because the church should serve as the custodian of truth and as a bridge to bring people together in unity and have the ideal sense or concept of nationalism, patriotism, and unity as a whole. Now, so if we recount everything that is missing right now in our country that should bring us together for an identity around our own character as a nation, then we ask the question, where are we heading? Reverend Dede?
Well, I want to bless God for this opportunity. This internet sometimes it can set you back when you come with vigor to discuss this kind of discussion. John, thanks for coming, for giving us this opportunity to discuss our beloved country, Liberia. Again, this is God's day, and we are rejoicing in it. John talked about a vision to a mission. That is beautiful for a vision, because you have to internalize it first before it comes out for other people to see, to accept it and walk with you. Because Amos 3:3 says, unless two agree, they cannot walk together. But my take on this thing, I see allegiance somewhere along the line. When is it allegiance to a person or allegiance to a cause? Now, if it is allegiance to a person, then you, myself, and John, then we are in a dangerous boat. Because why? Allegiance to a person may lead to a wrong cause, and then we find ourselves going the wrong way. So what am I saying? I hear all the good things that John talked about. I hear what you're talking about. But my question is, where are we going wrong, my friends? Is it because of allegiance to a person or allegiance to a cause? I don't know if you can just comment on that.
Well, and just before John, and that is a very good segue right there, because allegiance plays a whole lot of role in the betterment of any nation. Now, our allegiance first should be to our sovereign Lord, whom the crafters or drafters of the Constitution in the preamble declared that upon His grace, His gracious providence, our country will survive. And it's based on His grace that our country will stand. So, who were they referring to? They were referring to one God. So, first of all, our allegiance belongs to the one God, the Creator, who created our nation, Liberia, whose grace is needed in times of trouble, in times of instability. And that's one thing I believe that we are veering from, or that we are veering from as a nation. We tend to neglect that, and we tend to pretty much turn inwardly to define truth in ourselves. That is the way I see truth. I see truth that way. You got your truth, and I got my truth, and therefore the other person has his or her truth. Therefore, there is no absolute truth. So when there's no standard by which we can measure reality, then our justice system is fragile and is in trouble. Our own lives, including our family and our immediate neighbors, because without the centrality of believing in one truth, there can be some sort of unsettling reality of life. And that's where how I see it. Um, Mr. Lord?
Oh, I mean, Alex, I agree with you 100%. That is why Christians are more grounded, and religions bring strength out of people much more because of that common belief in the Almighty instead of man. It is better to believe in the Lord than to put confidence in man. I can say these things because I'm a reverend son. I'm the brother of a reverend. I'm a brother of another reverend. So, so I'm not ignorant to the word. But uh, it is quite true that we cannot allow ourselves to be devoted to individuals instead of a cause. And the reason why people can easily be swayed by the cult of personalities is because it's simply because of despair. In an environment where people live in despair, demagoguery becomes an easy path. And Liberia obviously is in a state of despair. Our people have lived in despair for so long that false prophets can come any day and pretend to be leaders, and they follow these cults of personality because they have lost hope. Let's focus on let's go back into history a little bit and think about 1997. Our people showed up to the polls and they said things like, "You killed my ma, you killed my pa, I will vote for you." They came out later in years to say that you know book, you don't know book, I will still vote for him. I mean, I probably might be paraphrasing, but that's basically what they said. And people laugh at these things that people say, and for many, they cast the voters who said these things to be dumb or silly. When you sit in conversation, people talk how silly Liberians are to say these things, but we have failed to understand and to underscore the frustration that led our people to these decisions. Only a frustrated people will come up and say that you killed my ma and you killed my pa, but I will still vote for you. It underscores a sense of frustration on the part of our people. So instead of focusing on that, on the words literally, we need to go back to the history of that position that they took. Why will people settle for such words of frustration? It's simply because they are in a state of despair. They have lost hope. And the solution has to be to replace that hope. And that can only come with people who can bring inspiration to these people, to be able to recognize the value that our people have, the potential that they have, and see how it can be tapped into. And how do you do that? We have to recognize that the greatest needs of our people right now is to have food on their table, to have viable health care, to have education for their children, to be able to earn a living if they decide to pursue business opportunities. So we have to create an economy. We have to, in order to create an economy and provide these things and have it with a degree of sustenance, we have to create a structure, a viable structure that can remain even for generations to come. So how do we put the infrastructure or the political structures or the government, the structures of governance in place to allow these things? It comes with a degree of wisdom, and it goes back to what I'm talking about, a vision on the part of our leadership. The vision cannot just be on how one can become president. The vision should be what they will do with the position when it's offered to them. And these are the things that we need to recognize when it comes to the ills of our society right now and the path towards progress. We need to keenly watch these people who say they want to be leaders and see if they can offer the basic solutions to our problem. Again, putting food on the table, providing health care for people to be able to live, providing education for the children in order for them and the nation to have a future, and to provide a structure that will provide sustenance, that will sustain these good results that we seek. I have not heard, politicians say anything about these things. The only thing we hear from the demagogues is how bad the opponents are. This person is wrong. Let's put him in jail. This other person is not right and they're not qualified. We understand, we know all that. But what can you offer the people to make a transformation in their lives? And I believe that those who are Christians need to continue to get on their knees and pray. Because as I see it, I think only God can send us that kind of leadership. But I believe
Yeah,
that leadership exists among our people. It just has to be
yes.
right.
Yes, and that is prophetic in a way
Yeah,
because I strongly believe there is already a leader in our midst
yeah,
that God has given. It's just that all the things that you talked about, how a leader with a vision and how a leader with the words of inspiration
yeah.
can galvanize people and see that potential gearing up to rebuild our country. And Liberia, I mean, we have been through a whole lot in the sense of hardship, suffering, and those things or calamities come based on our decisions or decision from maybe leaders. Now, look at it, just not just the political arena alone, the health of the church as a whole. Do you think the church is doing what it's supposed to do or finding itself in the right place and doing what should be done? Or is the church just lukewarm?
I believe the church is the church is lukewarm. I will agree, a little bit lethargic in their approach right now. And the church itself, sadly, is influenced by the same factors that bedevil the greater society. The church, includes true as well as false prophets. The church also includes people who are in it to benefit themselves, as well as those who are sincerely, determined to build up their flock. And in every nation, in the history of even the United States and other nations, the church has always been the bedrock towards, the building block of these societies. It's a place where people meet every week and get inspired by a leader. It's a place where people fellowship, and with determination to help each other and be their brother's keeper. The elements that the church provide is the basic bedrock and building block for the development of an entire society. The civil rights movement in the United States, led by the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, of course, we're describing him as a reverend, was led by a group of ministers, the Reverend King, the Reverend Abernathy, and the rest of them. They led that cause. Even the radical group that was led by Malcolm X, Malcolm himself was a minister, though of a different religion, but still a minister, a man of God. If the church fails in this responsibility, then the nation, of course, will remain headed towards a dead end. And I believe that the current failure of our nation can also be blamed on the failure of the church. I believe this particular solution that we seek can
Mhm.
be, the answers can be found right within the church. If church leaders, more than just praying, decide to take action and maybe make some adjustments that will allow their flock, to get out and do what is needed to be done to transform our society.
Alex described the church as a breach that sells between us and maybe the powers that be.
Yeah.
It's true, but you rightly put it, uh, the scripture is right. If the church that should be the breach uh, kind of takes side, and but that this is what I mean. We noticed we I don't know the names of one of those leaders who did that, but we noticed church leaders anointing a particular candidate, uh,
Mhm.
yeah, and declaring him. In fact, they anointed one before the elections were held,
I
and
remember.
we noticed that that candidate did not win.
Hmm.
So in that instance, the church was placed in a place of anointing somebody or choosing somebody. Maybe God did not speak to them. Perhaps God spoke to them, but God changed his mind. But God does not change his mind when he speaks. And so we see those church leaders in a place where people tend not to respect them, or because of that, by extension, the church came into disrepute. Now, I'm saying this to say, in what you said and what Eric said, the church's role is sacrosanct, it's very important, and it's just central. Church leaders have to be careful how they get involved, especially in politics. And the same thing happening right here in America. The evangelical groups, you and I know who they supported and who they still support now.
Hmm.
My fear is, in terms of what you're seeing, what Edison is saying, if the church finds itself in a place where is not seen to be a fair arbiter of truth or a dispenser of reality and justice, people would tend to not take the church seriously. Do you think this is the situation we have in Liberia now?
We have seen that on many fronts in Liberia, and I think you you very aptly describe it. From the history of our past elections, where religious leaders use their position and their influence, to aggrandize political elements on either side of the aisle. One minister supporting one side and claiming that God, gave him the right to ordain one political leader, and then another minister saying something to the opposite. So they clash with each other, or they come together and support one who does not win, as in the case of what you just described. Uh, it's better that they stay away from politics. And the wisdom of the American political experiment is that in the initial document, they were wise. One of the first, nation to have within its constitution the separation of church and state. And there's a reason for that. There's a wisdom in that. The church cannot be a powerful arbiter if they themselves are players and then referees. How can they become referees in the process? How can they, provide level-headed direction to the people if they themselves are involved? What are their motivation for being involved? And it comes back to the fact of the corrupt nature of some of the religious leaders. And I think it is a situation that seriously has to be examined and re-examined by those within religious leadership. And I think those leaders who have taken the wrong turn needs to be at least put in check, by the association of religious leaders that we have in our country.
And so can we like also look at the fact that human sacrifice is on the rise. I mean, it has been an ongoing saga in our nation's history, but it is prevalent now and it's in the open. And there are many victims, and families are grieving. And we ran a whole series on human sacrifice in Liberia just to satisfy another deity, another god. So then we find a country where both those who are occupying offices in the public space as well as others believing that they need extra power, supernatural power, to have extra influence or to be revered in many ways. Now, we know if we look in the book of Deuteronomy, God detests that human sacrifice, and that is mixing your faith with something else to give you a boost. That is wrong. Secretism, that is the name of it. That is a theological name for that, or term for that. And it is prevalent in our country. Why? Why would people engage in such human sacrifice, whereas they profess from their mouth that they love God and they are followers of Christ and they work in government and they're looking for influence, but and they do it over and over. People cried out. They cried out for justice. They cried out for the need to stop what is going on. Yet we see the same thing going over and over. So then, is it a reality that Liberians don't see, and they are not forceful enough, or they are not exertive to enough so that they can stop human sacrifice? If it is wrong that God says in Exodus chapter 20 that thou shalt not murder, he means that thou shalt not murder. So then, as a country, how can we progress when we see that appeasing another deity is more important than the God you profess you love, or that it is the foundation of your country?
Well, you said it all, Alex, and it's a sad thing that in the year 2021, in this modern society, people are still resorting to primitive behavior, which amounts to evil practices also in a nation, and yet, we claim to want to progress. Um, we listen to the testimony of so many people at the TRC, and they talk about leaders in the past that promoted this human sacrifice. Certain people running for offices and doing practices of ritualistic killing. And yet we saw, that they were killed by simple gunshots and and through ordinary means. So I don't know whether people haven't been aware of the past of people who practiced this thing before and saying that it never brought them any level of protection or anything, and yet they still follow this foolishness in our country, called ritualistic killing, going around through wicked deeds to kill people. But and yet the authorities don't seem to put any premium to this kind of this environment of insecurity that our people continue to live in. It brings us back to the morality and the devotion to Christian principles on the part of those who lead. If they were serious about believing in God, I don't think they would condone an environment that promotes evil to this level. But put aside their religious obligation, they have a civic responsibility. The church also has a religious responsibility to guide our people. But it also shows, you know, the decadence of our society. This is the same society that, 41 years ago, uh, murdered a minister, and people clapped as you know, you know, dozens of people were put on public poles and shot to death in cold blood, and later on, 10 years after, we went on a wanton spree of killing people and dismembering women with babies in their stomach, and the soils of our nation is soaked with the blood of the children of God who cried out in pain. I mean, that is not good in terms of our existence as a nation. And I believe that these very acts have had a toll, and has made a difference in our situation. For those of us who believe in God, we know that the retribution, is a reality. I don't think we have gone, with impunity for the evil that we have practiced. But again, I did make reference to the fact that we are human as other people. So, uh, for the sake of religion, we know that there's always forgiveness if you seek it. And but I believe that forgiveness has to be ushered in from the top level. We must be able to recognize our wrong as a people, be able to acknowledge our wrong and decide to turn a new path. And I see no better way of being able to correct these wrongs if it does not come from the top. And I think that particular emphasis must be reasserted at every opportunity. And I believe one of the greatest instruments, that could allow that to come from could be the pulpit that is controlled by the ministers.
Yes. And if you're just joining us, this is the Gracious Hopes live broadcast on KMTV. KMTV, we are everywhere. And of course, we are here every Saturday at 3 p.m. Central Time, 4 p.m. Eastern Time, and 9 p.m. GMT. And we really appreciate some of the comments you are making here. Please share this video with your friends, family, as well as your relatives. And of course, this platform is all about talking contemporary issues that affect the Christian life of faith, your life as a whole. We live in a world, but we are not of the world, Paul reminds us. So, therefore, since we live in a world, we are to be as the beacon of light. And that light has to do with our position and identity in Christ. And as a nation, Liberia, celebrating the bicentennial of its existence, we ought to now see the truth that we have been dodging all along these years. The reality is there, and we know there's no other place that we can turn except for our first love, Jesus Christ, because he brings peace, stability, tranquility, and everything I believe that we need to live this life so that we can be content and not involve ourselves in human sacrifice. And we now live in a country where we see the bad, the good, the ugly, the bitter, yet the Liberian people are resilient in their destitute. Therefore, our guest is, striking some points here that we all can look at and seek some wisdom and see the reality that yes, there's a giant in each and every one of us. In other words, he's saying God has imbued each and every one of us with the talent, gifts, abilities, and everything, but we have to exercise that if the environment is enabling for all. And we prepares the environment to be enabling for each and every one of us, those that are in leaders, be it in the church, in the political arena, or in any other kind of a business corporate environment as a whole. But it takes vision, courage, and the understanding that if love as a whole that comes from above should also be expressed outwardly to other people. Reverend Dede,
Yes,
we're getting
certainly,
a whole
certainly.
lot here, nuggets of
Yeah.
wisdom here from Mr. Lloyd.
A lot, a lot. And he has got me thinking a whole lot about thoughts that I've had in my mind, been pondering over all this time. And because he took us back to, I was there, I was there. I mean, I was literally there when I heard that song. We killed my pop, we killed my mom, I'll vote for you. And it also means how people will even think that way. And when he reflected on that, it brings me back to what I was years ago. And I asked myself the question: is this nationalism, or is it blind allegiance to a person, or it's just utter foolishness? Now, if a people would sing that song about the nation at the election where they should exercise their ballots to decide who leads them, and to where that person leads them based on keeping that person's feet to the fire. If they can sing that song, I ask myself, is it that Liberians, have helped to perpetrate what we experience today by our actions or inactions towards our leaders in our nation state? Is it that we fail ourselves and keep blaming our leaders? That's the question I keep asking myself. So, John, what would you say to that? Ellis, what would you say to that?
Well,
Yeah, and it goes to John. It's go to Mr. Lloyd, because do you agree what Mr. Reverend Swai Dede is saying? Do you think our problem is a hard issue, which means
no,
we are not we don't love our country to the extent that's why we pillage the resources? So is this a hard issue?
well, I don't believe that it's a hard issue. I don't believe our
Okay.
people are any worse than any other group of people. I've traveled to so many countries and I've seen one thing, that people are the same wherever you go. They got a song that says they're good and bad in everyone. But we got to learn to live, and we got to learn to love each other. And I also would add that we have to learn to bring the best out of each other. We can bring the worst, again, I say, out of people, and we can bring the best out of our people. And there have been leaders in the past that, for personal reasons and for personal aggrandizement, have brought up the worst in our people, because they have tended to gain out of the division of our people. And they have put our people in a situation of despair, where they have sung these songs of "You Keep My Mind, Keep My Part," and then they have reduced our people to the lowest level and exploited that particular position of our people for their own personal power, wealth, and gain. So no, I don't think our people heart, is any worse than any other group of people. I think they have the worst out of them has been brought out, while the best of them is still sitting potentially.
But
So
John,
we,
what I'm thinking, John, is it this puzzles me. That's
yeah,
why I want to just bring it out for
yeah.
us to just ponder over it a little bit. But this behavior, this action, aren't we helping to perpetrate what is happening? Aren't we encouraging our leaders to do what they do? But the way we behave, the songs we sing, the behavior towards acceptance of certain things that we know are not right, but then we still support those things as people. The government aside, but we are the ones who are the people. We call our leaders, we elect our leaders. But our behavior, don't you think we contribute to what's happening in our society?
I mean, no doubt, our behavior are contributing, and giving further ground for uh, uh, the bad leaders who divide us to flourish. Our people, we can compare our people to a situation that psychologists describe as cabin fever, where people get kidnapped by certain people and are subjected to bondage. And after a while, they begin to accept their captors as normal and decent people.
Mm-hmm.
where slaves, used to say, oh, I have such a good master because he is not as bad to me as he is to other people, as other people are to them. But yet and still, this man is keeping them in bondage, and because they have accepted, that condition of servitude and subjugation. And I think that's what has psychologically happened to our people. They have been conditioned, to subjugation for so long, and they have now reached a state of acceptance, where they come up, one day a leader will rip up their resources right before their face, and then the next day he turned out three lights on the street and said, "Oh, he's doing so well, master. Thank you so much for being so good to me that you took 100 out of from me and was so gracious to give me 2 cents." You see, so that that is the sick situation that they have reduced our Liberian people to. But what I'm trying to say is that despite, the acquiescence of our people, because that's what you're describing, the acquiescence of our people to subjugation, and they are enabling, like like you rightly said, the exploitation of our own society, by their actions of acceptance, of these things. So we are, are complicit as a people to this, to the crimes that are being meted upon us. So it's about time that we find a way to open our eyes to what the truth is, and the fact that there's a clear path for redemption on our part, but it has to come from us. But one day we, somehow the eyes of our people will have to be open, where they can straighten up their backs. Because if you don't bend your back over as we are doing right now as a people, then others will not ride you. But I think our people, their backs are being bent over so much that they're walking as hunchbacks, and allowing this level of exploitation to flourish in a particular society. So yes, to a degree, our people are responsible for the plight that we're in. But I'm focusing on how our society can get out of it, because
Mm-hmm.
I recognize that is the fact. But I also recognize that there is the potential for change that is still within our people that has to be tapped. And what we need to figure out how we can be able to tap their resources, and as I described our people as sleeping giant. And that would be the time when that giant, of prosperity within the Liberian people will be awakened. And these leaders will have no place anymore within our society.
But John, just this has been all the years and years and years now. When will we come to this truth? That's Ellie. That's our concern, Ellis and I and you and other
Yeah,
people. We've
yeah,
been in this thing for years, from the 1800s and 1900s. Now we're in this modernity. When will we come to this truth? You might not have an answer for that, but
yeah.
just when we come to this truth.
Well, I go back to the fact when I responded by saying that it doesn't come from the heart of our people. Is simply because I believe there are more good people than bad people in the society. But also, Martin Luther King also said, and many others have even given credence to the fact that good people, I mean, bad people can only flourish when good people decide to do nothing. And I think that is the problem in our society. It's not just limited to the church and to the state. Even within our own local organizations, in our church groups, in our associations that we partner with, we always have the silent majority of others who do nothing and then complain when the minority of those with bad intentions take over. But you see, the prophets, of doom and the proponents of wrong are always more, vigilant than those with good intentions. Those with good intentions always sit on the sideline and decide to do nothing. And while those who are inspired to do wrong, seem to have more vigor. And I think the only time that change will occur, if those with good intentions will realize that change will never happen until you make it happen. That praying, without, as the Bible says, faith without work is dead. So I think we're a bunch of people who walk around praying for good days to happen, claiming that we have faith, but are refusing to work. If I will
It's
put it in
like
technical terms,
it's
yeah,
it's like wishful thinking. Wishful
yes,
thinking to get you
yes,
nowhere. It's
yes,
like
you know,
talk, but no action.
no
There's no
action,
progress. Well,
exactly.
so do you think that we can progress as a nation if all of those who are now functionaries or occupying public offices who participated actively in the Civil War or some way or the other should not be there at all? Do you think that presence undermining the progress of our country?
Well, the person of those who participated in the war, the fact that they exist in leadership in our country speaks to the apathy of those who did not participate and who had better intentions. These people have forged their way and have managed to succeed in maintaining the power that they sought, while others who claim to be clean, and I think all of us can be included, have preferred to sit on the sideline because we refuse to get our hands dirty. No one wants to enter the fray and engage those who are wrong. And they always give the excuse that they have better things to do, but then they
Mm,
criticize those who are in charge. The fact is, you cannot have few people being always the ones who will want to step forward in the midst of an environment that is filled with vultures. The vultures have filled the environment, and those who are intentional about making change are just a few. So in most cases, the few sincere ones are overpowered by the host of those who are present, who seek power and who seek wrong. So those who perpetrated the war and who have gained dividends, from their malactions, remain in power because they have the space to do it. The space is they don't have much competition in the space, that will push them out. So that's why they continue to exist. It shouldn't happen. I mean, I think even the TRC report
Hmm.
indicated that these people should not hold offices, but there have been nothing, basically done, because those who seek, I mean, the proponents of good are few in an environment that is overwhelmed by by those who have malintentions towards our nation. It is a reality, and I think more good people need to step up.
Okay.
That would be the beginning of of the solution of our problems.
Okay. Sure, sure. And time is fast spent here, and we'll soon be out of here on this program. And so, lastly, here, but we agree that the change that we all yearn for does not start from government or from the church, but start with each of us. That is, each of us contributing our voice or voices to what is going on, making our voice heard, so that people can know our true intention for our country, and also to understand that the whole concept of nationalism, patriotism, as well as allegiance to the interests of the country, they are all built on the individual reality of what it means to live in a nation with its own sovereignty, and how, as a people, with one identity, can make the country a better place. So then, my last question here, and I know Brother Dede might have one more,
Mhm.
is that you strongly believe that each of us, yes, we can be blamed, we can blame the government, we can blame the church leaders, but we can rise up. Like you talk about a giant in us, that is the potential in us. The potential has to be explored, it has to come out. So, will you agree that that change we're all yearning for should start from us individually, maybe from the local level, from the community, from the family, and then outwardly to the society as a whole?
Yeah, I strongly believe in that. I'll give you a scenario because we have debated, for almost an hour on how we can inspire this change. In the 1950s, when African Americans, were living under the scourge of the Jim Crow laws, and they had leaders upon leaders who had never succeeded in changing, the existing realities of the human conditions. They found Martin Luther King Jr., who was a very powerful speaker who could inspire. And he was not the leader of that particular movement, but he had the ability to inspire people and bring them together. That was the piece of the puzzle that they needed. And through King and his voice, he inspired many blacks throughout the United States. to stand up. What he encouraged them to do is that to take the approach where even in your individual environment, if you need to see improvement, you can sit back and see it happen. You can't complain that there are a lot of dishes in the sink and you can't find a spoon to eat, and when you refuse to at least wash it to eat it, I mean, in order to find something to eat. You can't join an organization or a church and complain that it has bad leadership when you yourself refuse, even though you know better, to join the leadership. So we need to start with our individual selves within our families, in our communities, in our local organizations. Begin to participate if we have values and we have, expertise and we have experience that we can offer to these institutions that we are part of. Whether you find yourself to be a member of Alja or PUL, or whether you find yourself to be a member of some alumni association or a member of a church, people need to practice what Christian people talk about when they say stewardship. They need to practice stewardship, which is personal responsibility for your environment. We don't all have to be political leaders, but if we participate in our communities, in our societies, and contribute what we have as stewards to those particular institutions, or naturally it will build and mushroom into the development of an entire society. And that's the beginning, of change. Because those who propagate wrong, or those with malintentions and hidden intentions to do wrong, they start from these very grassroots levels, and then they are recognized and given the vehicle to rise up to higher level. But we can stop them at their core if we all begin to participate at the lowest levels, and then we can begin in that way to identify better leadership for our country. So just as King inspired African Americans and blacks in the city, I mean in the 60s and the 50s, to begin to rise up and see the value within themselves and be able to come together and be able to follow a common cause. We should be able to start from the lowest level and find a way and be resilient enough to find someone or find a group of others in various institutions to rise up and inspire our people. And when we inspire our people, that hidden giant, that sleeping giant will be awakened. And in the short period of time, we may be surprised. Our country will be transformed. I still believe that.
Reverend Dede?
Yeah.
Yes, let me just, I will keep the rest of the questions. I think he just read my mind, just ran through it. So that as a good journalist, I would just forget about that because it's been answered already in so many ways.
Yeah.
But I just want to leave this with our people.
Yeah.
What are we missing? What is happening? I think we miss our first love, and that is God. We've come a long way based on the direction that God has given us. Well, for some way or the other, we are swayed away from that. And I want to leave First Kings chapter 18. I'll just read this voice, and then this question for us to answer. When I mean us, I mean Liberians as a whole, wherever we are around the world. And Elijah came near to all the people and said, "How long will you go limping between two different opinions? If the Lord is God, follow him. But if Baal, then follow him." And the people did not answer a word. The people did not answer a word. Why? They were confounded, they were bewildered, and they could not just grasp that question. That's what Liberians are today. We just cannot find an answer to where we are today. Why? Because we're not taking our time to see God's face, put aside all these differences that you talked about, Law and Ellis talked about, and begin to really focus on what is happening amongst us and with us. What is going wrong that we cannot see? It's because we missed the path, the track that God has laid for us. And it's right here. How long will we keep limping between two opinions, God or man? And I think we are leaning more on the side of man than God. This is our problem. This is where we are. And the moment we snatch ourselves by the power of God, through the power of the Holy Spirit, out of this situation, Liberia will rise again. That's just my take on it for now.
Exactly. And we'd like to thank you on that good note. We'd like to thank you so much for joining us, and Reverend, not Reverend Swandede, but our special guest,
The man is
Mr.
Reverend
John Lloyd. Mr. John Lloyd is a very staunch voice in the community of the Washington Metro DC area. He served there as the president of that community very well. And he has been undertaking some other initiatives with the American government in DC for that city, for the people of color. And of course, he has been involved in Liberian politics, both in writing his mind and also speaking up. Very eloquent, as you can see. He was able to well articulate how he sees some of the things that we are missing that we don't see before our eyes. And it takes vision, it takes leadership, it takes the will and the power of each and every one of us in dependence on God to erect our country from its current status. I mean, we don't want to see the worst of our country, but we want to see the best. In order to do that, we have to join hands together and have the power to voice out and have the power to vote as well. But remember that this is a series going on, the truth that Liberians do not see. It will be going on throughout the subsequent Saturdays that will be coming up, and we have variety of not guests, but also variety of other things, characteristics that underline the entire topic will be on our macros group. So please join us, and next week Saturday we'll have our special guest, Father James Wilson of Minnesota. He's a very great man in the community, and of course he will also be bringing his perspective on why the truth is so missing in our livelihood as Liberians. And we'll have some other guests coming up. Like I said, the subsequent Saturdays that will be laid out. And feel free to opine. Let us know what you think and how best can you develop your country. And this is where we bounce ideas off of each other so that we can live in a country that is prosperous, fearing God, and loving our neighbors as ourselves, and allow our love to seep deep into our bloodstream so that there will be no hatred, there will be no envy, and every other thing that God has prescribed in His law. And so, thank you so much for coming, our special guest, Mr. Lord. Thank you so much. And we might be calling you on again in the future to join our podcast. And we appreciate your time. And of course, thank you once again.
Thanks,
It's
John.
certainly
Thanks
been a
very much.
pleasure. Thank you, gentlemen.
Yes.
Okay.
All right. And tomorrow is Sunday, and of course, Reverend Dede is going to be here with his Bible teaching at 5 p.m. Eastern time, and I'll
Yeah.
be here in the afternoon as well. But we'll be back here next week, Saturday, at the same time, 3 p.m. Central Time, 4 p.m. Eastern Time, and 9 p.m. GMT. Please share our video with your friends, your relatives, and of course, your family. And on behalf of KMTV, with Randall and the rest of the other crew, we'd like to say thank you so much. Happy New Year to all of you. And may God richly bless you and have a good weekend. Bye for now.
Bless you. God bless you.
Yes. All right.